including the members and potential members, to know that on 9/11 at 2:30 in the afternoon, I got a call from New York. Mayor Giuliani asked our executive chef program in New York to find somebody to come down to organize and coordinate all of the cooking, because there would be hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of first responders. And I was the New York State representative for the National Chefs Association. And so they called me to go down, and I happened to be working for the Palmer Food Service Company, and I asked Mr. Palmer if I could have a day or two off to go down to organize that. Well, I went down on the morning of 9/12, which was, of course, the day after. I wasn't allowed to fly into New York, nor was I able to drive into New York, but the New York City Police Department was kind enough to send a helicopter to me, to the airport here. I was flown to Trump Tower, landed on the roof, and escorted to the harbor in New York. It was the Harbor 32, and it was there that I met with the Red Cross, and we decided that we needed to coordinate the chefs. So I put an SOS out across the country, and 1,300 of my colleagues responded and came to New York on their own dollar, took their own hotel rooms as I did. And I wasn't there for 2 or 3 days. I was there for 41 consecutive days and nights, 24 hours a day, paying attention to the cooking for our first responders, representing, of course, Rochester and the nation. I was very proud to do that. But while I was there were so many things that I experienced. The one thing that I experienced that was really brutal, and it's difficult to talk about it. It was the aroma that covered, and that was called the crime scene. The news people named it the Ground Zero. Ground Zero is in a wartime, and it's a war zone, but that was a crime scene that was taped off. And as I walked through that crime scene in my work shoes, my feet burned, because even the pavement was so hot from the fires of the fallen building that you couldn't hardly walk on it. The firemen wore asbestos, as you probably heard in the news, shoes and little booties, and even our canines, the little dog, they had asbestos booty on the animals, and that was one thing that I never anticipated. My clothing was drenched several times a day from perspiration because of the heat. It was just like living 3.5 miles from the sun. I can't explain it any other way. But that and the odors and the fine mist of ash that was in the air. I was checked for the first 4 years by, what do they call that doctor? The pulmonologist. They were for the lungs and breathing. And luckily I didn't ingest a lot of the ash, as many of the first responders did, because they were closer to it than I was. And two very sad and interesting things was, we were on the Spirit of Hope, which was a ship with one of our dining rooms. One young lady came up to me, and she was crying so badly, and I said, young lady, she was a firefighter. I said, take your backpack off, sit down and have a nice buffet. We happened to have meatloaf that day. We never knew what we were going to cook because the trucks were coming in from all over the country with food. And of course, as you remember, Giuliani says, no more trucks, you'll have to stay away because we've got food spoiling. And we have enough problem having to worry about where we're going to dispose of the spoiling food. Well, anyway, she kept crying. She was really almost tremulous. She was shaking. I said, please, what's the matter? She said, Chef, she says, it's not what's happening here. She said, that meatloaf reminded me of my grandma when she died just 4 days ago. Well, of course, I felt completely being Italian and being close to family, it just destroyed me to hear that her grandma had died and my meatloaf tasted like her grandma. Another sad thing was, I was walking across the crime scene with one of the lieutenants, and this one, I keep saying soldier, fireman was just on his knees, crunched over and holding on to something very tightly. And I patted him on the back and I said, look, son, I said, get up and take 5 minutes for yourself and pull yourself together. He says, you don't understand, Mr. Chef, you just don't understand. And I said, what don't I understand? He showed me that it was the arm of one of his colleagues had blown completely away. And how he knew it is because the patch was from engine 24. And he just knew that, and from what we knew from yesterday, they are family, and that was his brother that he was holding, and they couldn't find any other party except that. So these are things that we, as civilians, that weren't there to see it, smell it, experience it, the heat and the sadness and the trauma. Many of the moms, one lady came to us on the, I think, 30th or 35th day, and she found her husband in the big truck that were the morgues, and she was sitting on the curb just weeping, holding her husband's picture. Again, the lieutenant and I said, what matter? What can we do? She said, they won't give me my husband because I don't have a cemetery or mortuary that will take him. I said, well, what do you need? She says, I need money. I said, well, how much? She says, I don't know. So I got all of my chefs and I said, guys, the lady wants to bury her husband, the father of her children, and she can't get him out of the morgue. We need money. And they said, how much? I said, I don't know. They all put their hands in their wallets, and they all came out with 20 and 50 and 70, whatever they had. And they gave it to me, and I brought it, and we had $3,700, which bought a funeral, not an elaborate one, and she was able to take her husband. He happened to be from Costa Rica. And so she was a girl that worked in the Twin Tower. It could be her day off, but she would have been gone as well. And he was a custodian. So a lot of things happened from us here in Rochester. And by these two hands, I'm still here to talk about it and cry about it. And share it with folks like you that weren't there 13 years ago to see only what you read in the papers. So thank you for acknowledging the memorial for these young people that passed away. And thank you for letting me be chef here at the club again. This is my second time around. So thank you so much. And thank you very much.